CNBC TV 18 Weekender.
Hello and a very warm welcome to CNBC TV 18 Weekender. We're in Nashik, the wine capital of India, to meet the Tsar of India's wine industry. This Stanford graduate left his cushy Silicon Valley job to come back and cultivate his family land. He tried his hands at mangoes, he even tried oranges and then roses, but eventually tasted success with the wine grapes. The founder and CEO of Sula Vineyards, Rajeev Samant, is our guest on this edition of the CNBC TV 18 Weekender. Hi, Rajeev.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Could you introduce us to your dogs?
This is Tommy and this is Mango. They're both rescue dogs who, people have brought here.
Farm dogs.
Farm dogs, basically, yes. We have a lot of them here.
So tell us, how did it happen that a Silicon Valley engineer landed up at a farming place in Nashik all the way?
Of course, this story now has gone a little bit into legend, but all that time back, 20 years ago, I just decided that I didn't want to sit in a corporate office. That wasn't me. One life to live. I wanted to do something really special, something different, and give something back to the community at large. And I just decided to come back home. One thing led to another. I landed up here in Nashik, where my dad was born. We were at a family wedding, and then he just happened to take me out to this piece of land, which was grassland. So we had grass this tall with, cobras underneath and stuff. It was nothing like what you see here today. And I just saw something. I felt something here. And that's how this whole story began.
But it can't just be, one day's revelation where you thought, no, I got to go back to my farmlands in Nashik. What was really the reason behind you quitting that plush job?
When I quit, I didn't know I was going to come back to Nashik. I just decided that I was getting bored. And this whole thing, in the US at that time, you only got 1 week of vacation in a year. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
So it was, or maybe it was 10 days. But that just wasn't enough for me. I'm a guy who believes that this beautiful planet is there for us to go out, see, enjoy. And I said, okay, this is a great job. I'm getting paid amazingly well. I have a nice life. But it's not worth it if you're going to get only 10 days or 14 days of vacation in a year.
Why work so hard and get...
Exactly.
Okay, so tell us about how the name Sula came about. What is the history? Where did the idea of setting up a vineyard in this farmland that you originally had, where did you get the original funding?
Well, that's a lot of different questions. Let's talk about the name. Until then, you had these wines in India, a few wines, with these sort of pseudo-French names.
Yeah.
And thinking about a good name is so difficult. It's almost as difficult as making good wine. And I was just sitting trying to think about it. And one day this name just popped into my head, Sula. And I said, wow, that sounds very beautiful. And I called my dad, who was giving me a lot of advice at that time with the project. And I said, I have the perfect name. It's so simple, it's international, it's cool, it's Sula. And there was a moment's silence and he said, well, it's your mother's name. You
didn't think of the fact that it's your mother's name
Well, my mother's name is Sulabha. But you see, the short form of her name is Sulu.
Oh.
It's Sulu. So it didn't strike me right then because I called him immediately and said, I have this great name. And he said, well, it is part of your mother's name. And I said, well, of course, I don't know what I was thinking, but that's the name.
All right.
Yes.
What about the initial funding? I mean, did you have enough capital to start from your job in the Silicon Valley?
Yeah, I had been day trading while I was in California. So I had an online trading account and I had begun, trading in companies back then, more than 20 years ago, in Amazon and, Apple and companies like that. So I had also a nice nest egg, which then I repatriated those funds. And that was like really the seed money. And then my dad, of course, helped me a lot. My uncle, one of our neighbors. So it was one of those bootstrapping, family and friends sort of affairs, which got us to where we needed to be.
But I believe you didn't get lucky at the first go, right? You've tried mangoes and roses and oranges and whatnot here before you.
Sure. I'm sort of the classic, entrepreneur model from Silicon Valley, where you try this, doesn't work, okay, but you learn something.
Yeah.
You try that, again doesn't work, but you get a little bit further and then you hit it, Except that mine wasn't like apps and technology. It was, growing things like mangoes, flowers, etc. until I hit it with wine.
But obviously initially you would have had a little bit of a struggle before this really took off. Did you then look back and think, perhaps I should have just stayed with my cushy job? This is just proving to be too challenging. Was there ever a thought like that in your head?
Oh, many times. Listen, entrepreneurship, I know you see these pictures in the papers, these stories and on the news channels of, oh, this person has hit it, it's a unicorn, this,
Rags
that.
to riches.
But you think about the number of stories where the people don't make it, and those are many, many more than those who do make it.
Yeah.
And there are many times in an entrepreneur's journey when you're like, oh my God, what have I done? And why have I gone into this? I would go back to California to visit, and I would say, oh my God, why did I give this up? But it was never like a really, a hard thought. It was just one of those like, driving up the, California coast from San Francisco up to Oregon or something is one of the most beautiful drives in the world, and you just look and say, okay.
What in your day-to-day, in your life, what are the challenges you face in your job?
The challenges have really changed. So initially, there were many, many more challenges.
Yeah.
Today, life has calmed down a lot. We are Sula, we're a really well-known brand. We have a lot of people who want to work for us. In the beginning, one of the big challenges was finding people who were willing to work for an alcohol company that wasn't well-known, that was small. Women, for example, coming from traditional backgrounds, whatever, their parents would not want them to work for a wine company. Wine was the same as whiskey, for example.
Yeah.
Today, it's like, oh, I got a job, I'm getting a job at Sula, and a lot of parents would say, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. Or things have changed where a young woman's going to say, well, okay, you have reservations, but I'm doing it anyway, which didn't happen at that time, for example. But one of the big problems we faced at that time was with the government. So again, wine was treated like whiskey.
This was back in the 1990s.
That's right. So when we started, really around 2000, it took me 2.5 years to get a license to make wine here. Right. And no winery license had been given in 15 years in Maharashtra state.
Okay.
And after Sula happened, and then I persuaded the authorities, I had a lot to do with it, to bring down the tax on wine and to boost this industry, which is a great boon for rural employment and for farmers' incomes. Maharashtra government had a big change of heart, and from that this wine boom really was born.
I really want to know more about how you brought about that change, but more after this break. We'll slip into a very short break and be right back.